Hey guys, Dominating Reaper here. So, it's Sunday, I'm outside the cinema. I'm about to head into one that I've been really looking forward to. Is This Thing On? Yes, this is the one with Will Arnett. Trailers for this have looked very good. Obviously the story it's telling seems very interesting. It looks obviously to be quite funny and heartwarming. Looks to be, a bit of a crowd-pleasing tale. Got my fingers crossed it'll be good. Especially, obviously, with Bradley Cooper directing. But the only way to find out if it actually is any good, to head in, get some snacks, and get seated for Is This Thing On. So I've got my popcorn here and a Fanta, ready for a story based on John Bishop. So, Is This Thing On? I'm back from seeing it. This is of course directed by Bradley Cooper. He also co-wrote the film with Will Arnett, who also stars, and Mark Chappell. There's also, notably, a story credit for John Bishop, as well as executive producer, because of course the whole thing is very much inspired by the story of how he started out in stand-up comedy. Now, obviously, it's not a biopic, because obviously all the characters here are fictionalized, but it's still, a very, very interesting real-life tale, and one that, done well, definitely has the potential to be ripe subject matter for a dramedy like this. But does the film do justice to the very interesting real-life tale at its core? Let's find out. So the film follows Alex Novak, a man navigating middle age, whose marriage of 20 years to his wife Tess begins to fall apart, with the couple separated and heading towards a divorce. One day, Alex finds himself unable to pay the $15 cover for a bar, and so decides randomly to put his name down for an open mic night at the Comedy Cellar, where he soon begins to find a renewed sense of purpose in doing stand-up comedy, with it giving him a vehicle to tell therapeutic stories from his life during his sets. So obviously I was looking forward to this, mostly because of it being based on John Bishop's story, but I was also curious to see what Bradley Cooper would do next as director, because I seem to be one of the few people that actually liked Maestro, even if, yes, Cooper's quite aggressive bid to try and win an Oscar was pretty obnoxious. But I respect that he has pulled it back a bit here, tried to be a bit less Oscar baity in his approach, and it's a restraint that really pays off, because I like the film a lot. At its core, it's a quite grounded and thoughtful portrait of a struggling marriage, offering up a very interesting look at why marriages sometimes fall apart, no matter how long the couple has been together. Naturally, the driving force of this is Alex and Tess, and their marriage of 20 years collapsing. There's also a subplot in here about one of their friends, Christine, played by Andra Day, who's having problems of her own in her marriage. The film, quite respectably, tries its best to explore both sides of the equation in a way that feels balanced and emotionally honest, and that approach really shines thanks to the performances of Will Arnett and Laura Dern, who are both great here, particularly Arnett as Alex. I really enjoyed seeing him get the chance to step into a more dramatic role, and honestly, I'd like to see him do more dramas in the future, because he's just wonderful as this quite tragic man drifting aimlessly through life. He gets, this renewed sense of purpose, this second chance in doing stand-up comedy. And there's quite an interesting recurring Chinese New Year thing about, goals that feeds into his arc in quite an interesting way. He's just a wonderful and really compelling screen presence. And although yes, Dern is great too as Tess, a woman who's obviously she's had to make a lot of sacrifices for their marriage and their kids, but yet she feels like her husband wasn't there for her. And the contrasting performances really play off each other very well in a way that perfectly sells this quite fractured relationship. Now, it helps as well that Cooper's directing is a lot less show offy than previously, instead opting for a more restrained approach that tries to match the emotions on display. Obviously, there's a lot of scenes that are shot with handheld camera. There's a few scenes where, the camera sort of hangs on to close-ups of characters' faces to really sell discomfort and awkwardness, particularly a scene early on where Alex gives these quite awkward deliveries of his stand-up material. There's also a scene quite late on where Alex is angry and the camera's obviously quite energetic and shaky to really match that. It all just feeds into this quite natural and raw energy the film has, and that extends to its obviously scenes with Alex's stand-up set, which is obviously quite, awkward and unpolished, particularly in a scene where he keeps flubbing lines and missing cues. But it also mines an element of humour from that awkwardness, because obviously, being about stand-up comedy, you expect there to be that comedic element, and yes, it is. It is funny in a sort of awkward and cringy way, but it works really well for what the film's going for. It also finds humour from its characters as well, particularly in some scenes with Alex's parents, played by Christine Ebersole and Kieran Hines. Hines, in particular, finds a lot of warmth and in his character in some quite crucial scenes, really bring in that sense of heart. He's great, although he always is. The comedic highlight, though, let's be real, is Bradley Cooper's character Balls. I mean, I respect the hell out of the fact that he's given himself a character here with the name Balls. Props to him for that. But yeah, he is very funny as this, unemployed actor who's a friend of Alex and Tessa's, who has a tendency to get quite attached to the characters he plays. And there's also, I guess, a sort of element of drama to his character as well, and the aforementioned subplot with Christine. He's great here. Now, obviously, with all these character elements the film's juggling, the pacing can at times feel a bit indulgent, particularly in the back half, as there are scenes that run on a bit longer than they should. And they do kind of drag on a bit. So I feel like if you trim them down a bit, you get the pacing absolutely perfect. Although there is, yes, a fair amount of interesting stuff in between these, particularly in these, quite raw and emotional scenes where Alex and Tess confront why their marriage fell apart the way it did and didn't work, which all is very, very compelling and really adds to the film's rich exploration of doomed marriages. But the film overall does a really great job of bringing all of these elements, dramatic, comedic, character, brings it all together to really sell the sort of chaos of it all that, again, just really fits with the film's quite raw energy. And it really shines in the quite high energy drum score from James Newbury. There's also it also incorporates elements, of course, of Under Pressure. Now, obviously, it uses it to deliver some big emotional moments in a way that perhaps feels a bit like it's reheating After Sun's nachos, but the way it utilizes the song is very, very effective and does deliver a quite moving and uplifting climax that does give these quite interesting and imperfect characters the closure they deserve. Overall, Is This Thing On is a very compelling and emotionally raw look at a troubled marriage that is heartfelt, emotionally honest, and very funny, but it shines thanks to great performances from Will Arnett and Laura Dern. Out of 10, is this thing on? Gets an 8. So, let me know down in the comments, have you seen Is This Thing On? What did you think of it? Did you think it did justice to John Bishop's real-life story? What did you think of Arnett's performance? And what's your favourite film that Bradley Cooper has directed? Let me know all that down in the comments. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you're new. And don't forget to turn on post notifications so you don't miss an upload.